Hey everybody, this is David Skarica. A little windy here today, so just going to try to keep my phone as close as I am. Beautiful day though. Perfect breeze. 77 degrees. Just perfect. No, yeah, we're in mid-December basically, so there's no not a lot of humidity. I did put my feet in the water. Yeah, you can see how hurricane season ends at the end of November, because water, you know, for most of you it would be probably okay. For me, it's pretty chilly. So, like, I've really become climatized here. Probably from like November to April, I go in the ocean like the number of times we count on one hand. It's just, I'm used to it being, you know, 85 degrees and warm, like bath water in the summer, you know. So when it's back, and it's like still not cold. It's probably just, I mean, warm. It's like probably mid-late 70s, but it's just when you're used to it being like between 85 and 87, you know, it makes a big difference. So, but the living weather, this is perfect. You know, this is like heaven, you know. So, so what we're going to talk about today, a currency that's not so heavenly. My native homeland, Canada. So we're breaking below 71. I got the chart below this, so there'll be a link for those of you watching this on YouTube, and the charts on the, like, I just recommend you go to addictedtoprofits.net. It's going to be soon. Everything's going to be redirected, hopefully by the end of the year, to profitfrompessimism.com. And I will also start uploading these. Right now my Patreon page is free. It'll just be these free videos, and then I have to get an LLC because you can't get it. I can't send the money to my Bahamian account, so I'll have to get an LLC in the States and then set up a bank account probably in Florida and do that there. And that will be a little more in depth than the Patreon as well. So there's that little update. So Canadian dollar. So down here, the next support level after about 70 is 68. And then you're talking the lows of the early 2000s, 62 cents. And one issue you're going to have is you're going to have a fiscal crossing in the night here, where Canada's going to keep spending like drunken sailors for the next, I guess it would be 10 months under Trudeau. And the U.S., if it does start putting in, implicating some of the stuff with Doge, and we'll probably start cutting spending. And I've seen some of the, it's really sneaky what they did, but smart, sneaky smart, right? Like, they didn't talk about, because no one wants to hear that spending's going to be cut and things might be rough on the campaign trail. Then as soon as they got elected, they threw this out there. So we've already talked about cutting $1 trillion. And I've said this over and over again. Government spending is a short-term boom to the economy. One of the reasons that the U.S. is growing faster than anyone in the OECD is because they're also spending more than anyone in the OECD. So that's what you have to understand. That in the long run, it's a drag, but in the short term, it's a stimulus. But in the long run, it's a real drag. In that, at some point, if you spend too much money, like, you know, you just go bankrupt and then you can't grow at all. So, but you know, that's probably positive for the dollar. If, you know, these European countries and Canada and all this other stuff don't really cut anything, because their deficit's going to start shrinking. Now, granted, the Canadian deficit is estimated to be 60 billion. I always say the Canadian economy is roughly 1/10 the size of the American economy. So that's about 600 billion. And of course, the U.S. deficit is 2 trillion. So as a percent of GDP, it's still way lower, you know, where the U.S. is almost 7%. You know, the Canadians about 2.5, 3. But also, the provinces have more autonomy than the states and definitely spend more per capita. And like Ontario is the biggest non-governmental debtor in the world. I think it's even bigger than California. So you have to take that into account. If you probably combined all the provinces with the federal government, it's probably not quite at the U.S.'s. I think the U.S. is around 2.3 if you include the states. The states are around 300 billion. So I don't think it's quite there, but it's probably, you know, 1.5, the equivalent of, you know, like it's 150 billion. So you have to take that into account. So, but yeah, this could really hurt it. And, you know, we have issues. Canadian dollar's not really trading with oil anymore anyhow, but we have issues with oil. We have regardless of what's going on in Syria, we have real problems in the global economy with slowing growth. 65% of new oil demand came from China in the last 20 plus years. Well, China's slowing, and last month, excuse me, EV sales were half of Chinese auto sales. So you can see, so one country where actually EV growth is real, and one reason is China's the largest producer of lithium in the world, so they can supply their own industry at probably a discount. So oil demand is going to be a problem, especially in a slowing economy. And if U.S. wants to really drill, baby, drill, who knows? If you get a recession, oil could go back into the 40s, and that's going to probably kill off supply more than anything else. So, and that does hurt the Canadian dollar, because even despite Trudeau's best efforts to ruin the industry, Canada produces 80% more oil now in 2024 than it did in 2009. So, and also on a per capita basis, Canada produces a lot more oil than the United States. So I think it's around 3 million barrels a day. And again, you take into account the U.S. is at 13 million, it's roughly a quarter, and Canada has a tenth the population. So probably almost 2 times. They produce about 2 times per oil per person in Canada. So, but I think the issue is really more all the red tape, socialism, high taxes. I read something that in the per capita amount of entrepreneurs or people starting their own business in Canada, I would have been one of them 20 plus years ago. From 2000, that's about the time I started my business, it was like 3 per 1,000 people. Now it's 1 per 1,000 people. So, you don't have entrepreneurship, you have high taxes, you have socialism, you got this fool as prime minister, and it just, I don't know, man, because I remember, if I give you a little story here, just so I'm finishing off here, about Canada in the early 2000s when I grew up there. And so I grew up there in the early 2000s. I was working for my friend Mike Swanson. I met him in like 2001 or 2002, I think it's 2002. And we were both really bullish on gold. So I just started writing like a weekly kind of column for Wall Street Window. And he paid me $3,000 a month. It was like a little part-time gig. And at that time I was in my early mid-20s, and I was really struggling to get my business off the ground. And I was just like, I was thrilled by it, because when I switched it to Canadian, it literally was like $5,000 a month, and I was making $5,000 a month doing a part-time gig Canadian. So I really saw the effect of that, the currency. And I don't know, I think we could go back to 60 cents. If you get a recession, if you get kind of like the milkshake theory thing I talked about yesterday. So anyhow, that's the stock chart of the day, is the Canadian dollar. But I think when Polar gets in, he'll really promote the mining industry. He'll clean up the place fiscally. And usually under conservative governments, all the way back to Diefenbaker back in the 60s, the currency does much better than under liberal governments. So if there is a recession, the U.S. has to cut rates and print money. That's usually when the U.S. dollar sells off. So then maybe the Canadian dollar, if it goes to 60, can make the long trek back to being par again. And that's a big deal, because one reason I bought my house, another story, I've talked about this in the past, I made some money on an investment, and then I was able to transfer the money at 1-to-1 back in 2011. And then you put down my mortgage payment. So everybody, that's it. Canadian dollar. Today's stock chart of the day. I'm going to do more of these from the beach because the weather is so nice. I think this weekend is kind of going to be rainy and windy. So on the weekends I watch football anyhow. So I'll give you a quick panoramic view. Beautiful day, like I said. And I hope I kept this close enough to my chest that I didn't get a lot of wind.